Hello, welcome back to Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High-Performing Women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swinson-Ridley. I'm really excited to be joined today by Laurie Lewis. Laurie is an intermittent fasting coach and author, and she's went through menopause dealing a crushing blow where she got brain fog, lack of balance, memory loss, and sudden gain of 50 pounds of stubborn hormonal fat. She tried everything she knew to feel better, and the methods that worked in the past made absolutely no difference. Many women on this listening to this I know can relate to this story. After 4 years of struggle, Laurie stumbled upon intermittent fasting and started fasting that very same day. The menopausal fog lifted in less than 1 week. She had more energy and felt like herself. She lost 51 pounds in 15 months and has kept it off for years. Now, at 57 years old, Laurie has turned her personal success into the premier thriving intermittent fasting coaching business. As a certified health coach from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, she combines her knowledge of nutrition with deep research and practice of time-restricted eating. Laurie guides her clients with a dream come true to eat the foods you love and enjoy the rest of your life feeling vibrantly well. So Laurie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. It's so
I can
much fun.
already, yeah, I can tell we're going to have a lot of fun with this conversation.
Yay.
I know
Buckle up.
so many of our listeners can relate to, the journey you've been on. I work with so many women that are like, hey, all the things I used to do just don't work anymore. And it's frustrating and disheartening and all of the things. So I introduced kind of some of your journey, but just kind of tell us a little bit more about how you got into doing what you do today.
Well, that feeling stuck can happen at any age for sure. And it doesn't feel good. And we all just want to feel better and better and better and not have it be, so I got to this point where I thought I would have to surrender to this idea, this belief that it just gets worse and worse and harder and sicker and heavier forever. And I'm an optimist. You don't know me yet, but I'm always looking at the glass half full. And I'm like, I don't want to believe that it gets worse and harder forever. And so there I was, a person who has a personal passion for nutrition and eating well. That's why I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, really to fulfill a personal interest. And I had another career. and so when I suddenly gained 50 pounds with menopause, everyone in my life was like, wait a minute, you're the healthiest person we know. How did this happen to you? And I'm like, I know. And I knew it was hormonal, of course, because our bodies, and this is where this conversation really applies to people of, especially women of all ages, is that whether you are pre-menopause or perimenopause or menopausal, but if you're in your 30s, menopause is coming. And it's the time is always right to take amazing care of yourself, right? So there I was. I'd had a real challenge through perimenopause from age 44 to 49 in my case. I hit menopause early. The average is around 51, 52 years old, and I hit it at 49. And that's when my body just was holding on to fat like oxygen, and I couldn't turn it around. And I really struggled for 4.5 years, not only with the excess weight, but I was in pain all the time. Everything ached and hurt. And my brain, my mind was foggy and my balance was off. Like I fell down a whole flight of steps in the New York City subway. And I just was not myself. And so when I found out one night miraculously about intermittent fasting, I, as you said a minute ago, I started that very same day. And within 3 days, I had the feeling that only we know what that feels like, which is, oh, I feel like myself. I suddenly felt clearer and brighter and more connected to my body. Like I just was myself. And of course, nothing had changed on the scale in 3 days, right? And I'm really lucky that I was visiting my mom, who was just incredibly supportive. And so every minute she was saying, "You look great, honey." I'm like, "Mom, I've been doing this for 4 days. I look the same." you know, but it's one of my big coachings is to always have someone in your camp who, no matter what, is like, go you, right? They don't have to be doing it with you, but to have a champion, to have someone who's always got your back, to someone, someone who is, it's not their job to it wasn't her job to hold me accountable. She just loved me and really wanted to see me win. So I kept going, and now it's been 4.5 years. I've never missed a day. But what people should know is that we get to design our own eating window. So my eating window and the length of my clean fasting every day is different based on what life holds, what my schedule holds. And so some days I've fasted 12 hours and some days I've fasted much, much longer.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing way to live. So now I get to teach. Now I am a full-time health coach. I never would have expected my life would take this turn when I got certified all those years ago. And I have clients around the world, and I just get to help people feel better and better and better.
Awesome. I can
Yeah.
tell it's been so there's so many conversations we
Whatever,
can
we
have
could go a million ways, right?
I know. And I told you before we started recording, I haven't ever really had anyone specifically talk about intermittent fasting on the show. So I'm kind of excited about this because I think it's actually very simplistic in a lot of ways.
That's
And I
right.
think as type A women with, I tend to talk to our high performers, we overcomplicate the heck out of it. And we're like, it has to look a certain way. So what actually brought me up was, yours doesn't look the same way every day. So let's define, what does intermittent fasting actually mean? Like where,
Excellent.
because there's
I love
creativity
it.
there.
All right. So it's not a diet. And
Mhm.
what it is a pattern, eating in a pattern of time. So then you take the 24-hour day and you chop it into. It's that simple. There's the fasting part and the eating part that I call the eating window, fasting hours and the eating window. My particular methodology that I subscribe to, and based on coaching thousands of people, is that, and Jen Stevens, who wrote a book called Fast, Feast, Repeat, coined this phrase, the clean fast. Now, in my world, we shouldn't even have to define it. Fasting is fasting,
Right?
refraining from nutrients and flavors,
Mhm.
and eating is eating. So there we get to save all the fun flavors and nutrients and deliciousness for later in the eating window and keep the fasting hours very, very, very plain and simple. So again, this is where people complicate things. What am I allowed to have while I'm fasting? Well, that's funny. Nothing. Okay, so people are like, what? It's so hard. I want to, so here's the thing. It's actually easier. Here's why.
Mhm.
If you fast clean, what that means is plain unflavored water of any temperature or sparkliness. Plain unflavored black coffee, plain unflavored bitter green or black tea. Now people think tea, mint, chamomile. No, tea is tea. Bitter green or black tea with no ginger, lemongrass, fun flavors. Okay, so keep it super plain. Here's why. When we ingest nutrients, flavors, sweetness, even if it's like, oh, it's just a little squeeze of lemon, the brain, the hormones, the digestive tract align to receive food. They're like, yay, food's coming. And they get ready for it. And then you think you're fasting and you don't actually give your body food, it gets mad. It's like, where the heck's the food that you just promised me with that little taste of something, something? And it makes fasting harder. So the clean fast, I mean, and if people are out there thinking, well, I do it a little differently. I heard I could have a little, cream, or I heard I could have a little bulletproof this or that, or, there are all the reasons why those things could be helpful or work for people. But I challenge people to fast clean for a month and see how much easier it gets and see how your body feels better and your mind is clearer. And then you get to enjoy all the yummy food that you love, nutritious, delicious, as we say, window worthy. It's your special eating window. So your food should be window worthy, and eat it later. So that's what intermittent fasting is.
I love it. I think it's very true. A lot of people get tripped up on, and even myself, I've experimented with this here and there, but it's like, oh, you can have bone broth or you can have, and
Bone broth, it's loaded with
it's
incredible nutrients.
it is great.
It's
Food in
food.
your eating window.
It's
So
food.
it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting. And for anyone listening that maybe this hasn't worked for you, I challenge you that maybe you haven't fully done it the way that
Right.
it's designed to be. done. And so talking about the hormones and stuff, and if you don't have an answer for this, it's totally fine. But one of the things I teach on a lot with my clients is rebalancing leptin, because I find that our leptin hormones go off.
Yes.
Leptin and ghrelin are our hunger hormones and tell us when we're full
Yes.
and when we're hungry and all that. And, the way I have been trained to do that is very different from intermittent fasting. But I think the problem actually lies in what we just talked about with, we're cheating during the fasting window. So how do you have any kind of input on how intermittent fasting can help with rebalancing that? Because I've been trained a certain way that involves like 3 meals a day, 5 hours apart, which obviously isn't compliant or easy to do.
Well, it could be
It
if
could.
you go you have your first meal, and then you go 5 hours and have your second meal, and you go 5 hours and have your third meal. That's 10 hours. So that means
That's
that
true.
someone who's eating in a 10-hour eating window is fasting, if you're fasting clean, for
Yeah.
14 hours, and you're asleep, hopefully for 7 or 8 of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's great, because 12-12, fasting consciously, cleanly for 12 hours a day, has been proven to extend a person's lifespan. So you'll live longer if you just wait. If you stop eating at 7 p.m., drink plain water, sleep, wake up, drink plain water, have a cup of black coffee, eat your breakfast at 7 a.m. or 8 or 9. That's 12 to 14 hours. Good for you. You just extended your lifespan. So, regarding your question about hormones, we have over 80 hormones. It's amazing. We're this complex network of little chemical messengers. And the ones we think of first, of course, are estrogen and progesterone and cortisol, and then maybe melatonin and oxytocin and all the thyroid hormones. But insulin is really important. And when we're fasting clean, we're lowering our circulating insulin. And insulin is very closely linked to ghrelin, that hunger hormone, and leptin, the satiety hormone. And leptin has other jobs too, but its main job is to say, stop eating now.
Yeah.
When we're fasting, well, we have an appetite center in our brains that are broken. And the reason they're broken is because we eat all the time, and we eat ultra processed foods. In the presence of refined sugar and ultra processed foods, leptin can't do its job.
Right.
I mean, it's literally mixed up, because everybody's experienced that. It's like you could be stuffed, and the minute the dessert menu comes, suddenly you have this ability, this flavor profile changes, and you're like, I've got lots of room for creme brulee. Right. And then the body can't say stop. So when we're fasting consistently every day, that apostat, the appetite center in our brain, has a chance to repair and balance and restore itself into working condition, like a wild animal knows when to eat and what to eat and when to stop eating. One of my favorite experiences in life in general, and now I get to use it as an example, is I was in South Africa in Kruger Park, looking for beautiful animals all day, every day for many days. And one day we saw 2 cheetah running so fast and take down an impala for their meal, which was sad for like a second, but and then they caught it, and they rested, and they ate it slowly, and they put their heads up and looked around, and then they ate some more, and then they sat up and they licked themselves clean, and they walked away of a half-eaten carcass because they knew they were done. How did they know? Their leptin hormone informed them that they'd had enough food. And that works for us too. And especially in a pronounced way, people who intermittent fast for, consistently every day for at least, once you get to the 2-3 month mark is when my clients and people start saying, oh, now I know what that feels like. Because they'll have some half-eaten thing. Like, who could leave a slice of pizza in the box, right? Everybody's eaten their share, and there's one slice left. Most of us who could not, we can't leave it there. Someone has to eat it, and it has to be me. And what happens is leptin is like, we're done. Don't eat anymore. And it's pretty quiet. It's firm and quiet. And it's not like being stuffed. It's like being done. And
Yeah.
that's an amazing feeling. And so, yes, eating in a pattern of time, having an intermittent fasting practice allows for that. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. So I have lots of questions, but
Go,
we'll start
Alex,
with this
go.
one. How do you recommend people get started? Because I find, especially in our world, I talk a lot about kind of like the emotional drivers of eating, and so a lot of us maybe struggle with eating too late at night. So whenever I've, taken on having that fasting window, it's not like you're skipping breakfast or having to wait until 1 or 2 in the afternoon or any of that crazy stuff. Where do you recommend people start? Because it can be a challenge if you've never really done fasting before and your
Yes,
hormones are off and you're insulin resistant, which 60% of the population is, like
that's right.
all of that. So where do you recommend people start?
I believe in slow and gentle. I think that the old adage of, the rabbit and the hare and the tortoise is a good one. And if we're interested in sustainability, I know as people who are goal oriented and achievement oriented, we want to do well from the get-go and get all the benefits and all the results. And yet I do know that starting gently is much more of an assurance that will
Yeah.
continue. The point is to continue.
Right.
And as we age and throughout all human history, human beings have gone without food and then had food, and then without food and had food, whether it was long bouts of time or every day there was just one small meal. And that isn't extreme. That's actually, our bodies are not designed to eat all the time. And so when you push all your nutrients into a concentrated time frame, you're allowing your body for an abundance of healing in the clean fasting hours, deep
Yeah.
cellular repair every day. And then you eat to satiety, like yummy, nutritious food that you look forward to having later in your eating window. And so you get to say what that eating window is. But I really feel, like I mentioned earlier, that you decide what time you're going to close your eating window today. 7 p.m., let's say.
Yeah.
And then you add 12 hours, so it's 7 a.m., and you're asleep for much of it.
Right.
And then the next day, if you get to 7 and you're not hungry, don't eat. Don't feed an unhungry body.
Yeah.
Wait. But you want to be prepared for when you will eat, right? So let's say you plan to eat at 7, but then you have to get in the car and drive to work at 8. You want to be prepared to eat. You don't want to be driving, you weren't hungry at 7 or 7:30, and then you get in the car and then you're like ravenous and you're unprepared. So being prepared as an intermittent faster is very different than being prepared as a dieter. You just want to have some good quality mineral water with you, maybe a plain magnesium capsule or some plain unflavored electrolytes, and a small, I always have a little packet of olives from Trader Joe's, which are just 10 little olives in this little tightly sealed packet. And it's nice little salty fat. Fat is really satiating to open your eating window and break your fast just a little bit. If you're ever caught ready and your body is like, eat now, you don't want to be scrambling for food. And just a little bit will hold you over. And so
Yeah.
increase. I really strongly believe that most people, most really being like 98% of people,
Mhm.
can quite easily do a 16-8 schedule. So that means you eat between 10 and 6 or 11 and 7 or 12 and 8 or 1 and 9, depending on where you live and what your schedule is and when you like to eat, how much of a night owl you are. To break the late night snacking, though, you really want to start putting in place habits that are, when dinner is over, the kitchen is closed, right? Like
Yeah.
our, I don't even want to say ancestors, my grandparents and even my parents, it's like, dinner's over. If you ate your meal, you could have a sweet. And then there was no like eating after dinner. Like, that's weird. Who does? Well, we do that now, but we certainly didn't 40 years ago. So the kitchen's closed. Eat tomorrow. Jen Stevens wrote another book called Delay, Don't Deny. And I love the methodology about that because when we know when we're going to be eating next. And when we know some delicious thing that we're going to be eating, I'll give an example. So one night I was texting with a client. My one-on-one people can text me. And she's like, it was like 8:30 or something. And her window had been closed for a few hours. And she's like, I want a hamburger. I'm like, okay, describe the hamburger to me in all its deliciousness. So she did. And I said, when's your eating window open tomorrow? And she said 1. And I was like, okay, can you have that hamburger tomorrow at 1? And she's like, yes. And I was like, do you want it now? And she's like, no. So it just calms the nervous system. It's like, I'm opening my eating window tomorrow at 9:30, and here's the yumminess I'm going to have. I can keep fasting now. And then you get present to all the benefits that are happening, keeping insulin low and tapping into your body fat for fuel and making new brain cells and all the incredible things that are happening when we're fasting is definitely motivation to keep going and eat later.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I've, just sharing some of my own story, I've been someone who I've attempted like longer multi-day fasts, and I fail epically, and just my body does not do well with that. But a lot of it comes down to mindset. And so I love that idea of like, oh, I can have that.
I have a theory about that.
Do you tell me about it?
Okay, so what were some long fasts that you attempted? Like 3 days, 5 days?
3 was the most.
Okay, so 72 hours.
Yeah.
And before you started that, how often did you eat? What's your general eating schedule?
I usually eat between the, like I fast sort of. I generally have breakfast around like 9 or 10. And it's not heavy. I have a smoothie with all kinds of veggies in it and all that. Like I do healthy things. Yeah. I have mine right here actually.
Yeah.
Years out. Yeah.
I got water.
You got water. I got water too. And then, lunch and dinner are always protein and veggies. And I know a lot of my clients are like this too. And typically, I don't always, but typically I'm done eating by like 7:30 or 8 at the latest.
Okay, good.
So, yeah.
So that's about generally you probably are fasting like 12 to 13 hours every day, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What that is not providing is what we call metabolic flexibility. You're not fat adapted, meaning your body hasn't moved through the available fuel and gotten into your fat stores. And one train station along the way is okay, so your body uses one fuel source at a time.
Right.
It's not like a hybrid car. It doesn't skate between them. It's linear. So it uses the food you just ate and the glucose in your blood, and then it moves to the stored glycogen, which is excess glucose is stored as glycogen. It's primarily in your liver. So if you think of the liver as a bathtub, and the glycogen is pull the stopper, and every day you're intermittent fasting, the glycogen, you're chipping away at it. And if you start from not fasting to fasting every day, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks. So let's say 3 weeks for that bathtub, the liver, to empty of the stored glycogen. And then it can take a few days even for the body to recognize that, oh, there's all this other fuel here called body fat. Oh, wow, this is so exciting. We didn't know. Okay. So my theory is that because you're not already an intermittent faster, you haven't chipped away at that stored glycogen, because every time you eat, you don't fill it all the way back up when you're an intermittent faster. You drain that tank, and then every time you eat, it fills up a little. But then the next day when you're fasting, it goes right back down. You get right back into fat burning. Yeah. So for you, I'd be curious, and I always want people to note the time, like how many hours fasted are you when it gets hard? Because you're generally switching fuel sources, and the body is like, I don't want to, just feed me. And so I think you were, the mental noise gets strong, but then the physical, whatever discomfort, it's not always discomfort, but can cry out, stomach rumbling and like hunger. And so I think that the timing on that would have been when you depleted your glycogen stores and you're not yet metabolically flexible and your body doesn't know to shift into fat burning, that it got really hard.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. And I think you're accurate in that. We were talking earlier, this brought up another thing because, you had a significant weight loss journey over just kind of a gradual period of time, which I can understand.
Gradual.
If you're
Yeah.
using fasting to deplete your glycogen stores and shift into that fat burning mode, that is how that happens.
Yep.
I've lost about 25 pounds in the last, well, it was like over 3 months basically. But
Incredible.
we did it. It takes a lot of work, and I have a 12-week program where I do this now, but it's the same idea. We're shifting the body from burning the sugar and the glycogen stores to burning fat. And so it's making that
Great.
metabolic shift. And so you can do it with some pretty extreme measures, as I did, where you can do it, more gradually with your fasting. So that's pretty cool.
It's interesting that you said the way that you said that, because people think that it's a lot easier to change what you're eating, like the ketogenic diet, for example.
Mhm,
People think it's a lot easier to change what you're eating because we're used to eating and we're used to dieting, even though it's hard.
mhm.
They think it's easier to change what you're eating than implement a daily fasting regimen. And the opposite is true. It's actually much easier and more effective because fasting creates 20 times more ketones than
Yeah.
the ketogenic diet. So it's easier to eat in an eating window and fast clean and more effective physiologically than
Mhm.
it is to change what. Now, I'm a big fan of changing what you're eating in terms of people discovering for themselves what foods make you feel amazing and what
Yeah.
foods do not. And I've learned that most people have no idea what foods make them not feel well.
They have no idea
So
that they're connected at all. We're
it's
so
all a blur.
from ourselves. So
It's just like
yeah.
I'm not sleeping well. My digestion is messed up. I have autoimmune diseases. My hormones are whacked, but people have no idea what foods make them feel well and not feel well, which is so much why I love my job. So, yeah,
It's
isn't it
and it's
great?
not about a diet, and I've been a big
Yeah.
proponent, we're talking about the ketogenic thing, like, the keto diet, honestly, is just driving me crazy at this point because, like, I go to Costco because we have teenagers and we've got lots of boys in my house, and it's like, you can get keto chips and keto ice cream and keto this, and I'm like,
It's
"That's
still
not it's
ultra
no, like,
processed food.
the whole idea is, like, eat real food and help
Mm,
train your body into where it can go into releasing fat mode, where it's burning fat instead of your sugars. And it's different for everybody too. Like,
right.
I go into that place a lot, having more carbs than, traditional keto might say.
Mhm.
And so it's, yeah, and doing that combined with a fasting window, I think can really,
Would I rather have you eat a baked potato fully loaded, or
Mhm.
keto chips? Come on,
Yeah.
it's not even a contest. Eat real
Yeah,
food. And then
exactly.
if you're fasting and eat real food that you get excited to eat, then the body will start to steer you. It's amazing. This appetite correction is not only the quantity of food, like leptin is able to
Mhm.
communicate to you and say,
Yeah.
stop eating now, but it's also the quality of food that people are like, why do I suddenly want to eat spinach and eggs every day? Yay. It's like,
Yeah.
when I eat my chips or whatever, do I get ravenously hungry for more sugar later? And does it taste kind of icky and chemically? That's because
It is.
appetite correction is
Yeah.
informing you that that's not really food.
Which is unfortunately is most of the stuff in the grocery stores
I
in the
know.
United States. But um and so this brings me into I think this might be my last question for you, but we'll see where we go with it.
Great.
Another common problem I find with especially, the high performing woman, the busy woman that we're talking to on this show, and that I have been, and it sounds like you have also been in your life, is we actually chronically undereat. I find a lot of women who are barely consuming maybe 1,200 calories a day and wondering why they're not losing weight. And that's because
Mm,
your body thinks it's starving, so it's saving everything. So how do you, and one of the issues I've seen with some people in the intermittent fasting is they kind of look at it as a way to eat even less. And
oh,
how do we
no.
how do
Yes,
we negate that?
that
Because
is
that's
a type
not
A
fair.
way of thinking. It's like
Yeah.
if this is good, more is better. No, 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 no. Right? So or if intermittent fasting is good, then calorie restriction plus intermittent fasting must be
Great.
fabulous. No. Okay, so here's how it works. So very simplistically, the metabolic rate is determined by your body based on how much available fuel it perceives. So if it perceives there's a famine and there isn't much fuel available, it's going to slow the metabolism way down. With fasting, if you eat well, here's what's happening. So you're fasting clean, you're moving through the available fuel in your body, moving into fat burning, and as soon as you shift into burning your own body fat, your body perceives an abundance. It's like, wow, there's a lot here. Even so, I'm at my ideal weight.
Mhm.
I'm 58 now, and I weigh what I did in high school and fit into clothes that I've,
Awesome.
they're normal weight size, right? And so the even at my ideal weight, I have like 22, 23% body fat. So like a quarter of my whole self is fat. I'm not ever going to run out. So we don't have to worry about, but what if the fat runs out? That is never going to happen. So, right. So the body is like, yay, there's plenty of fat here. We're just chugging along, burning body fat. And then when it's time to eat, open the eating window, then eat well. Eat to satiety, eat nutritious, whole, a variety of nutrients. And again, when you're consistently practiced at it and appetite correction kicks in and your body is steering you towards the foods / nutrients that it needs, that combination of utilizing your body fat plus eating well raises the metabolic rate. So there are many people out there in the world who are absolutely sure that all intermittent fasting is calorie restriction.
Yeah.
But it's not, because there are studies that if you take, let's say, 1,200 calories of food and two different groups, and one group, they can eat all day long, or they're required to eat all day long, like little tiny meals. And then the other group can eat the 1,200 calories all at once. Yay. So satisfying, right? A big meal. The people who consolidated their food calories lost more fat and felt happier, right? Like
Yeah.
eating little amounts throughout the day. Eating makes you hungrier. So if you get into fat burning and you have this bright energy that's available while you're fasting, and then you eat to satisfaction, the metabolism goes up. And some days you eat more, someday. So I'm not a calorie counter. I don't encourage it. I really encourage people to tune into what their body is telling them.
Yeah.
But one day last summer, I had this thought. I was like, what if I just plugged into MyFitnessPal or something, like what I'm actually eating, and see what are my macros and what are the calories? So I did that for 2 weeks. Some days I ate 800 calories, and some days I ate like 2,800 calories. And it's just different. And obviously eating more fat increases the caloric intake, but I
Right.
was eating intuitively based on what I could feel my body wanted. And it's different every day. So if you get hung up on the calorie number, as opposed to tuning into your own self, you could be off base, but absolutely keep that metabolism humming by eating well and fasting clean. It's in a dance together.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so, I think you bring up something really important, because so many of us, especially when we're type A personalities, high performing, all of those things, or, I've been on my health journey and kind of through nutrition and eating and all that for 16 years. I started when I was 20 and I'm 36 now. But at some point it can get stale, or we get stuck in ruts of always doing the same thing. And we need variety. Our body needs different foods and different amounts of foods, and it's supposed to vary like that. So I just to
Absolutely.
reiterate that point
I
for our
love that.
listeners. Something just scared my dog. Sorry.
Oh, that's great.
So in wrapping up, just kind of to hit the highlights of this, we're starting with a fasting window. It's easiest to, decide when you're going to stop eating, and then just add 12 hours to when you're going to start. And it sounds like you got to give it some time. Like we have to give it 3-4 weeks at least before we can decide, like, is this something
Oh,
I'm
at
metabolically
least.
enjoying? Yeah.
And put the scale away. So I really believe in, when you're doing anything, if you're going to get on that scale,
Hmm.
get on it for 3 days in a row, add it up, get the average. That's your baseline number.
Yeah.
And put the scale away and have other things that you're looking for and looking towards as what's on your scoreboard, because we all actually want to feel better. We want to have our cholesterol numbers optimized and all the numbers we want to keep feeling better and better, better. And then we look to the scale as the be all and end all for how we're doing. And that doesn't actually, that gives us one data point, and it doesn't tell us very much about how we're doing. So I know that when people start something new, they relate to it like as a thing. They might have heard about intermittent fasting. It's like this thing. And so I liken it to, well, I say it's not a thing. It's what human beings have always done throughout all time.
Yeah.
And what if I came to you and I said, okay, Alex, I found out about this thing. I'm going to try it. You should do it with me. Here's what we do. At a certain time in the evening, we lie down, get horizontal, and close your eyes. And then, like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 hours later, we open our eyes and we get up and we feel refreshed. It's called sleep. And I'm going to try it for a while. And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to do it anymore. But if I feel better, I'll keep doing it. You want to do it with me? That is ridiculous. Like, sleep is imperative. It's not optional. It's not a thing. Fasting is the same. We just didn't know it. So if we can pause from eating, like, and so, even when people are like, give it time, give it a month, it's like, no, just keep going. Every day, have an eating window. Ask yourself, when am I eating today? Oh, I'm going to eat from 10 to 4 or 10 to 6 or 1 to 10. It's just like totally up to you. But just always live your life consciously putting your body into that condition of repair every day, and then eat later and you'll feel amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Important too is the clean fasting, which we defined in there.
Thank you for underscoring that. It really makes a difference. And the slippery slope for people is just one day they wake up and they're like, but I want cream in my coffee this morning. It's like, I know, you can have it later. Have your candy. I call it candy coffee. Have your candy coffee to open your eating window. But everybody can learn to either not have coffee in the morning or really learn to love, be a badass, drink black coffee.
Yeah. Or
So,
just not drink coffee, which is what
that's
I do.
right. Exactly. Good for you.
Have to have it.
We are very attached to the way that we like our coffee.
Yes, we are.
The
And
big obstacle.
ritual. It's not just, it's the experience of the coffee. It's not just the coffee. I've learned
That's
in
right.
working with a lot of women. So how can, anyone who's interested in learning more or wants to connect with you, how can they do that?
I would love that. My business is called Fast Forward. So it's fastforwardwellness.com. And I have group programs and coach people one-on-one. And my promise to people is that I am doing everything I can to support you in falling in love with your own magnificence. So I get to walk you home to yourself and how wonderful and amazing and strong and confident and flourishing you are. So
I love it.
fast forward.
I will put all that in the show notes. Laurie, thank you for joining me. I know I actually learned some stuff about intermittent fasting.
Yay!
I've
I'm
been around
so
it for a
happy.
while, so yeah.
When are you going to close your eating window today?
We're gonna go with, I actually don't know what's going on tonight. 7:30.
7:30 sounds good. Set an alarm maybe for 7:15 and say, ask yourself, what else do I need? And then eat a little something else and window closed. Brush your teeth.
Then you can't eat anymore. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us and just sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.